I arrived in work at 6. I finished work at 10 the previous night and ended up running into an assault on an old man on the way home. My commute was about an hour, so instead of getting home at 11 p.m, I got home at around 11:45. I have a quick bite with my wife and get into bed around 12:30, and then back up at 4:15 a.m. to get back into work. At about 6:15 I'm on station duties and a man comes in and says that he thinks his wife is missing. He's very sketchy on details and I'm having to drag information out of him. Essentially, they had a fight. She stormed out and didn't come home that night. I checked her on the system and she's respondent for a couple of domestic violence orders. I dig a little deeper and I discover that they're actually against her son rather than her husband. I'm very, very tired and a little cranky. I look at the bare information I have and send the chap home to wait for his wife. I check the hospitals, our own system to make sure she hasn't been arrested, and local and fire and ambulance services. Nothing doing. I circulate her details to all the units in the city and record the incident. I've done enough to cover my arse, and technically there isn't anything else for me to do for a while. I go get a cup of coffee and all I wanted to do is sleep, but something didn't sit right with me. I was suspicious of her husband. He seemed like he was hiding something. I went down to ask my skipper and asked him if I could go to the house and have a look around and maybe talk to the husband again. The skipper isn't delighted about it because it means that he'll have to cover the desk because we're short-staffed. He agrees like a trooper and off I jolly well trot. I arrive at the house and talk to the husband again and ask him if I can look around. There might be something that, might shed some light on where she might have gone. I have a scout around the house and find several containers of pills with weird names. A quick Google later, I discover that this woman appears to be in a cocktail of antidepressants, mood stabilisers and other stuff. Oh, and I find, an insulin kit as well. I ask her husband about these and he mentions that his wife had some emotional problems, but that he didn't think it was relevant. I sit him down and put it to him that there's a lot of medication here, and does his wife have more than one insulin kit? He goes pale at this point. She'd left all of her medication at home. I ask him where she keeps her purse and end up checking her bedside locker. Her purse is missing, but I snag a framed picture for future reference. I have no idea what this woman looks like, and ask her husband if I can search the room. He's beginning to completely break down at this point and tells me I can do what I damn well please and storms off into the living room. I'm feeling distinctly queasy at this point to say that nothing of a banging headache from sleep deprivation. I don't find any suspicious holes in the wardrobe where she might have taken clothes, any secret stashes of cash or drugs. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I search the bed. I turn over his pillow and there's a note under it, and it's a suicide note explaining it under no certain terms. That the MP is intending to end her life and that she can't go on and she's sorry for being a burden. I radio the station just to update them. I then have a walk down to the living room and tell the woman's husband that she's been sleeping on a suicide note overnight and never noticed. That was probably one of the hardest things I've been called to do while dealing with the dead children. I found her eventually, though. It took another 8 hours. We pinged a phone to a nearby town, but that just gave us a general locality. I put the town to her husband, and he says that he has no friends or family there. After 15 minutes later, he calls back and tells me that they spent a weekend there shortly after they got married. I called the hotel. They stayed in on one occasion, but no one by that name. I went down in person and showed them the picture of the lady at the desk, and they told me that the guest answering that description had just left for a walk to the pier. I went out to the pier and found her, and we had a bit of a chat. Nothing dramatic. She told me I looked awful and said that I was just very tired. I asked her to give life a chance for a few more days, that her husband loved her and she wasn't a burden. She agreed and we brought her home. A couple of days later she came to the station with a box of chocolates and a card that read, "Thank you for not letting me kill myself." When I realised how close I'd been to letting them out of rest because I'd ticked all the boxes on the list, I went to the toilet at the back of the station and threw up for what felt like an hour. She sends me the same card every Christmas. My dad told me this happened on his first year as a cop. He was on patrol like any other day when he got a call from the base, which he liked to call it that he needed to go to where a 911 call was dialed about a mile away. It was a kidnapping. He gets there and pulls up behind a green van sitting in a ditch and approaches it with his gun drawn. He opens the door and the first thing he sees is a guy in his 40s in a blood-soaked shirt with blood still seeping from his neck. He looked to the back of the van and he sees a kid, hands in his face, covered in blood and crying with a Swiss Army knife on the floor. So you can imagine what went down. Sure enough, the kid was being hauled away in the van tied up with a nylon bungee cord when he remembered that he had his 3-inch blade pocket knife. So he cut himself free and stabbed the kidnapper 9 times in total in the chest and neck while he was driving. After my dad called it in, he stayed with the kid who was still sobbing while repeating, "I killed him. I fucking killed him. He was going to take me away and rape me. So I killed him." I've been a cop for a while now, and this is one of the calls that still haunts me. I get a call for a domestic assault that had just occurred, and I learn that the victim is at the neighbour's house. I get there and find the female victim's throat has been cut from ear to ear. The neighbour is holding a towel up to her slit throat, and the victim is struggling to breathe. Paramedics are on their way, and I take over holding the towel for the neighbour. I'm trying to apply enough pressure to reduce the bleeding, but not so much pressure that I'm strangling her. It was a delicate balance. Quick law lesson. You know that there are laws against hearsay, right? Basically, I can't testify in court about the events that someone else has told me about that I didn't witness. The person who witnessed it would have to testify to it. And one of the exceptions is what's known as the dying declaration. If someone is on their deathbed and believes they're about to die, their statements are exempt from the hearsay rules. I'm having some serious doubts that this woman is going to live, and I want to ask her who slit her throat. In order for it to qualify as dying declaration, I need to be able to testify that she believed she was about to die. So I asked her 2 questions. The first was, "Who cut your throat?" Which she answered. And the second was, "You realise you might be about to die?" And she answered yes. Our eyes were locked and I still remember the emptiness in her eyes. Within a few minutes the medics showed up, and my partner and I went next door to find the suspect. The door was ajar and we could hear a baby screaming upstairs. We went in with guns drawn and the metallic smell of blood was overpowering. We made our way upstairs past smeared bloody handprints on the walls and found the child upstairs also. He was unharmed and the suspect was long gone. Thanks to the excellent performance of the medical staff, the victim survived. I met with her a couple of weeks later and I was very apprehensive to speak with her again. I'd basically looked at her and told her she was going to die. When she opened the door, I could tell that she didn't recognise me. She had very little memory of what happened after she was assaulted. I told her who I was and she hugged me, crying, and thanked me for saving her life. The suspect ended up pleading guilty, so I never had to testify as to what it was she told me that night, but it still haunts me to this day. The scariest call I've ever had was a medical call involving a 3-year-old girl. My first department I worked for required all officers to be responder certified, meaning basic medical training. Not enough to be an EMT or a medic, but just basic first aid. We would normally respond to medical calls until the EMTs arrived just to secure the scene. This particular call came out as a 3-year-old girl having a seizure. The location of the call was at a large hotel or resort. The closest vehicle access was the front entrance, and I had to go up on foot to the actual room. When I pulled up to the front, dispatch upgraded the calls and informed the girl had just gone into cardiac arrest. I started running to the room, which was nowhere near the front of the hotel, and after finding it, the family was in complete hysterics. I saw the little girl on the ground in the kitchen, who was still seizing. However, I could see she was turning blue in the face. The mum grabbed me and started screaming at me to save her daughter, and I hadn't performed CPR since the academy. I told the mum and everyone to get in the hallway for someone to run to the guard and the EMTs when they arrived. Suddenly it was now just me and the girl in the room, and the gravity of the situation suddenly hit me. There was no EMS that would get there in time to help her. I paused for about 10 seconds and just tried to collect myself, or froze up. It's cliche, but those 10 seconds felt like an absolute eternity. Somehow, I snapped out of it and began CPR, and amazingly, with the first compression, she suddenly let out a giant cough and started breathing again. I've been a police officer for 5 years now, responded to countless fatal wrecks, shootings, stabbings, murder scenes, etc. But nothing was as scary as sitting there on the floor next to that girl, knowing if I didn't do something, she was going to die. My uncle was a patrolman in a huge city for 45 years, and his worst call went something like this. It was a nice day in a nice area of the city, and my uncle was working on a tactical team of officers assigned to his division. Around midday they got a call, and a man living on the 4th floor of an apartment building noticed a group of children no older than 9 climbing on his car in the parking lot below. Not in any kind of malicious way, mind you, they were just playing. The man, who was blasted drunk, goes and gets his .22 rifle from the closet, opens the window of his bedroom and starts plinking shots off at the kids, who of course jumped down behind the car for cover. Panicked neighbours flooded the operator with calls of a man with a gun. My uncle and his partner were on the first of many officers to arrive, and the man is still shooting out the window. They call a 101 over the radio, which is officers need help. His partner pulls their 12-gauge shotgun out of the trunk and they move in through the back entrance of the apartment complex. My uncle drew his .357 Colt Trooper, loaded with 38 specials due to the department policy, from his holster, and they quickly cleared the stairwell until they got to the 4th floor. They arrive at the apartment and call out, "City Police," and within a few moments kick the door in. The suspect was so drunk that he didn't even hear the officers make the entry. They moved to the sound of the shots from the bedroom as the suspect empties magazine after magazine into his own car and the pavement around it. My uncle's partner goes in first, shotgun at the ready. My uncle comes in behind him, crouched low behind his dresser. At this point, more officers are on the scene and are streaming inside the apartment behind them, revolvers and shotguns drawn. His partner shouts at the suspect at the window, "City Police, drop the rifle." The suspect turns and looks at them, and the next part my uncle remembers the best. The man stares at both of them and says with a heavy southern drawl, "You're both gonna die today." He pauses for a moment and then raises the rifle to his face. My uncle's partner blows a single round off from his 12-gauge and nails the guy in the chest. My uncle squeezes off a round of his .38 and hits the lower right abdomen simultaneously. The man goes down, gets cuffed and pronounced DOA at the hospital. None of the children were hurt that were playing on his car, and all of the officers went home okay. I'm not a cop, but my co-worker's father is, and he hit me with this whopper of a story once. For some background reference, I live in Austin, and all these occurrences were with the Austin Police Department that happened in 1978. An APD officer pulled over a blue Mustang for not having a rear license plate, and a man and a woman inside. The officer tries to run the couple through a dispatch, but the system is down, so he lets them go with a citation. After letting them go, however, dispatch lets him know that the man has an outstanding warrant. The officer pulled the couple back over, and the man, David Lee Powell, knew his arrest was imminent. Crawling into the back seat, he loaded his AK-47 and opened fire as the officer approached. Mortally wounded, the officer called for radio backup before dying on the side of the road. Officer Valigius, my co-worker's father, hears on the radio that an officer is down only 8 blocks away and takes off straight for where he thinks the killer is headed, the highway. Before arriving, however, he finds a blue Mustang in an apartment complex parking lot with its lights off, cruising at a really low speed. He peels into the parking lot, blocking the only exit, and called for backup. And a storm of bullets pounds his police car, some from Powell's AK-47 and some from his lady accomplice as a pistol. As they're exchanging fire, Powell hurls a small, oversized object towards the front of the Officer Village's police cruiser. To the officer's horror, it was a hand grenade, and he was sure death was imminent. He explained his last thought being on his wife and kids, and how he was so sad that he wouldn't be able to see them again, and that being the scariest moment of his 38 years on the force, that the grenade didn't go off, and Powell and his lady friend were out of ammo. As backup arrived, Powell took off behind the apartment complex into the woods, whereas the lady accomplice attempted to hide it in a ditch. Seeing her in the ditch attempting to reload, Officer Valigius ran up to her and kicked her square in the face, shattering her jaw. Powell was later caught in the woods after a manhunt and received the death penalty for his actions that day. I'm a British police officer, and I have 2 stories to tell. The first one was my first day on the job, after 7 years in the army serving in Northern Ireland, which was 26 years ago. On my first day, a car pulled up asking for directions. Myself and another officer went down to help him out. I believe he was asking for the fastest way to get to the Bull Ring, which was in Birmingham. And it was quite a while away, so we were talking to him for a fair while. About 10 minutes in, I felt like I'd been punched in the back, and when I turned around, I saw a woman slowly backing away, holding a knife. That's when I felt the blood running down my back and realised I hadn't been punched at all. I'd been stabbed. I collapsed right there on the street, as did my lung, staring at the pile of dog shit. I seriously was thinking, this is it. My life is over. I'll never see my wife, I'll never have any kids, and I'll never see my parents again. I'm dead. This actually made the news, and I have some old newspaper clippings of it, and a photo of me in hospital, which I'll see if I can dig out maybe tomorrow. Whilst in hospital, a random woman and I still have no idea who it was, wrote me a letter. She didn't sign her name either, and I still have that note to this day. Number 2. This was quite recent, maybe 5 or 6 years ago or something, but we pulled over a motorbike, again in Birmingham, UK. The bike was doing 60 to 30, and when we pulled him over we instantly smelled cannabis, so we got ready for some abuse. Pulling him over, searching him, telling him we were going to search his bike, and then the whole, "Ain't you got nothing better to do than search my bike?" spiel. We, another officer and I, led him to a car. He put on a bit of a strop and refused to sit down. He had no cuffs on at this point, and there were 2 of us and 1 of him. I tried to get him to sit down, put my foot in the car with him, and then it kicked kicked off. He managed to force his weight back on me and get us both out of the car. We struggled for a bit and he took a swing at my face, missed and came back around again with a right hook. He was still holding his keys in his hand. We had told him to leave them in his helmet. He dropped, but he kept them in his fist. And his bike was keen sticking out the two of his fingers, and this time he hit me. About 16mm beneath my left eye, his key punctured my skin and I went down with blood pouring from my face. The other officer had already radioed for backup when we smelled the cannabis in case something did kick off. But thank God he did, because otherwise it would have just been me and him with an adrenaline-fueled biker 16mm higher and I would have lost my eye.